Hey, and welcome to our session on ERISA Fiduciary Training for 401k Retirement Plan Committee members. As a Retirement Plan Committee member, you are a fiduciary entrusted with a critical role in managing your employees' retirement benefits. Today, we'll explore the essential fiduciary responsibilities under ERISA and how to apply them by sharing 7 best practices necessary to fulfill your job. So let's jump right in. My name is Chip Hunt with PrimeTRUST Advisors in Greenville, South Carolina. For 32 years, I've worked with retirement committee members to help them fulfill their fiduciary responsibilities within 401k plans. In this session, I'll provide a clear framework for understanding your fiduciary duties and share best practices for effective retirement committee oversight. Well, let's start with ERISA. That is the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. This foundational legislation, along with decades of regulations and court rulings, defines fiduciary responsibility and is the source for guidance when managing retirement plans. Now, you aren't expected to be an ERISA expert in your role. You're allowed to rely on experts to help you make informed decisions. In fact, ERISA requires using experts when specific expertise might be lacking on a particular topic. But it's important that you are at least familiar with the rules so that you will know what to expect from any expert advisor that you may hire. Your role centers on providing diligent oversight of the organizations providing services to the plan, including investment advisors, TPAs, record keepers, and investment managers. To better appreciate the importance of your role in this modern world, let's explore the retirement landscape and how it has evolved over the last 50 years since ERISA became law. We've witnessed a major shift from the traditional defined benefit pension plans to 401k plans. Now, within a pension regime, companies shouldered most of the responsibilities. That is, they funded the plan, they calculated the contributions, they made the investment decisions, they bore all the investment risk, and they covered the cost. Now, in a 401k model, this burden has shifted almost entirely to employees. Think about it. Employees are now the primary funding source, and they must decide how much to contribute. They must select the investments. They must create their own asset allocation, and they absorb the investment risk and are often the majority of the plan's operational cost. Many employees are not fully equipped to navigate these complexities, giving added weight to the importance of your role as a fiduciary. That is, to manage the plan while looking out for your employees' best interests. Okay, I know all that sounds well and good, but what does this fiduciary role look like in practice? Well, we'll get to the 7 best practices soon, but before we do, I think it is especially important for you to appreciate the driving principle behind the law that led to the formation of these best practices. A word that I personally like to use is stewardship because it conveys an overarching, values-driven approach. It means careful and responsible management of something that has been entrusted to your care, in this case, the employee's 401k plan. So committee members should always keep the values-driven framework of stewardship in mind when implementing standard fiduciary practices to guide them in fulfilling their responsibilities. To promote and support these principles, ERISA outlines basic duties and responsibilities of a plan fiduciary. At its core, these fiduciary responsibilities are: 1, to operate, supervise, and manage the plan for the exclusive benefit of its participants and beneficiaries. And number 2, to invest the plan's assets prudently and with proper diversification to mitigate the risk of significant losses. However, this principle of exclusive benefit is further reinforced by two foundational doctrines, the duty of loyalty and the duty of care. Let's examine these principles more closely. The duty of loyalty. For every decision, a fiduciary must ask themselves, number one, am I acting solely in the interest of the employees? Number two, am I being especially mindful of their particular needs? Number three, am I ensuring that they pay only reasonable and necessary fees and costs? Number four, am I avoiding conflicts of interest? Let me share a story from my experience to illuminate this concept. Years ago, a client called to tell me he was firing me. Nothing personal, he explained, that he just planned to hire his brand new son-in-law fresh out of school and was just starting in the investment business because he felt obligated to give him a helping hand. Now, to a layperson, this might appear admirable, but in an ERISA world, this is a classic case of displaced loyalty. The decision was driven by personal obligations rather than professional responsibilities to provide for the exclusive benefit of employees. Now, I think everybody can see that. Interestingly, though, not only did this violate the duty of loyalty, but it also too breached the duty of care, as the son-in-law lacked the expertise to manage the plan. Now, the duty of care requires fiduciaries to apply a prudent decision-making process in their oversight role. Now, that word sounds good, but what does that actually mean? It means they must apply and use expertise in your decision-making role. It's either your expertise or someone else's. It's not enough to act as a layperson, someone with good intentions but lacking specialized knowledge. Instead, under ERISA, fiduciaries are held to a standard of a prudent expert. That is a person who's accustomed to making informed decisions in matters involving retirement plans and investments. In that case, clearly the new son-in-law right out of college lacked the expertise, so the duty of care was violated. If you don't feel like you have that level of expertise, ERISA essentially requires you to seek it out. And this is where hiring an expert, such as a 401k advisor or an ERISA attorney, becomes essential. In other words, you need someone who is deeply familiar with 401k plans and its fiduciary responsibilities to guide you in your role as a decision maker. And finally, the duty of care also includes the responsibility to offer a diversified array of investment options. This diversification is key to mitigating risk and supporting employees' various needs. The duty of care also requires that the retirement committees ensure that their plan operates according to the provisions within the plan's documents. By adhering to these standards, you help ensure that your decisions not only meet the legal standards, but also it builds trust and truly serves employees who depend on the plan for their future. In addition to defining fiduciary responsibilities, ERISA also outlines basic liabilities for plan fiduciaries. Now, I do not say these things with the aim to scare you. I share this only to stress the importance of appropriately managing this risk, and it is very manageable. So let's take a look. Under ERISA, fiduciaries who violate their duties are personally liable for any resulting plan losses resulting from their breach. Now let's pause for a moment and think about what is being said here in light of what we know so far. Fiduciaries are personally responsible for making good on the losses caused by breaches of their duty. Well, that naturally raises a critical question. Well, what about 401k plans where participants are making the investment decisions? Are fiduciaries still liable for bad participant decisions? Well, this answer may surprise you. By default, yes, fiduciaries are liable for participant decisions. That is, unless you are exempt from such liability. Fortunately, a very important exemption is available, and it's called the 404C exemption. This exemption provides relief from fiduciary liability for participant investment losses. So how do you get this important exemption? Well, it requires meeting specific notice and disclosure requirements to plan participants. Typically, the good news is your plan's record keeper provides these disclosures to your participants, but it's very important to verify that they are being provided correctly. If fiduciaries comply with these rules, the participants then are, in fact, deemed to have control over their investment choices, and the fiduciaries are not liable for investment decisions. This exemption promotes fee transparencies, addressing concerns like hidden fees in 401k plans, and providing sufficient information about investment options for participants in order for them to make informed decisions. This is why these 404 disclosures are so very important. However, there is another extremely important investment-related issue to be mindful of that 404C does not cover. Now, I want to make an important distinction here because there's so much confusion around 404C. 404C protects fiduciaries against poor investment decisions made by employees. However, under 404A of ERISA, fiduciaries still retain the responsibilities for prudently selecting those investment options, monitoring their performance, and ensuring only reasonable fees are charged to participants. This means that while you're protected under 404C, if employees make bad choices, fiduciaries are not protected under 404A if you didn't follow a prudent process, that is, as we've said before, applying expertise in selecting those investment options to begin with. Therefore, it's crucial to ensure that you establish an internal process for prudently selecting and monitoring your plan's investments. Relying on your record keeper service provider to do this for you is a mistake. Fiduciary best practices are not just a checks the box exercise. They are about creating and supervising a well-managed quality plan that benefits your employees. As you consider implementing the following best practices that we're sharing with you, prioritize those areas containing the greatest risk exposure to you. It could be things such as fees, the investment selection process, your performance monitoring efforts, required disclosures and notices and documentation, and participant communications. Now let's dive into these best practices. I'll give you a second to look at this list, but we are getting ready to go over all 7 of these in a bit more detail. Establish decision-making authority. Create a governance structure by delegating decision-making to a retirement plan committee. Establish bylaws, provide training, hold periodic meetings, typically I see quarterly, to manage the plans and supervise the plan's service providers, review investment performance, monitor fees, and track regulatory changes. Selection of the plan's service providers. When selecting service providers, follow a prudent, expert-driven decision-making process like we've discussed before. Start by assessing both your organization's and your participants' needs and objectives. Develop clear selection criteria, obtain proposals, and evaluate the candidates in order to find the best fit provider. Avoid choosing based solely upon fees. Ensure that the provider meets your criteria and will serve your employees well. And finally, continuously monitor the service provider's performance, ensuring they provide accurate, timely information and meet regulatory guidelines. Fee benchmarking. Continuously monitor both service providers and investment fees to ensure they are reasonable and necessary. While this doesn't need to be done every year, staying vigilant on this topic is key. Watch out for hidden fee or indirect compensation arrangements which may not be immediately visible. Remember, participants are often the ones bearing the cost, either directly or indirectly, so negotiating with their best interest in mind is central to your fiduciary duty. The Department of Labor is concerned about fiduciaries who neglect to investigate, negotiate, and advocate for reasonable fees. Hidden fees are a significant issue. Research and due diligence are crucial to ensure you're protecting employees' interests. Selection and monitoring of investments. Well, prudence is the key here when selecting investments. That means using expert advice to do that. Don't just fill all the investment slots based upon standard asset classes or Morningstar categories or some list that someone gave you. You want to be more intentional than that. Consider your participants' financial needs, their social economic status, their income levels, the level of complexity they're capable of dealing with, their financial acumen, and their investment knowledge. For many, keep in mind the 401k account is their single largest asset, so you want to approach this very carefully. I would suggest start by creating a draft menu of investment categories or investment styles that you want to include, but also to be sure to include the so-called qualified default investment alternative. Then, when selecting a manager for each of these categories, you want to be sure and assess the fund manager's skills. That is, the skills of their team and their capabilities. What is their investment philosophy? What is their security selection approach? What is their research support? And also to look at their past performance without focusing solely or relying too heavily on past performance as an indicator for future performance. In my view, that performance, those returns could have been just plain old-fashioned luck, not necessarily attributable to research skill. What you're looking for is consistency and repeatability of an investment process within a highly qualified organization. Now, after the selection process is completed and you've selected the managers, you want to be sure to monitor the performance on an ongoing basis based upon criteria that you have outlined within your investment policy statement. And I would say from my experience, if you are frequently making fund changes, then something's off. Consistency is the key to long-term success. Document retention and record keeping. This is the key area of weakness that I see amongst so many retirement committees and plan sponsors. Documentation is your insurance policy. You're going to want to keep detailed records, including meeting minutes, to demonstrate reasoned decision-making within the committee. Without it, you are exposed. For example, if you cannot locate the contracts that you have with your various service providers, the Department of Labor may well reasonably assume that you don't understand your agreements and cannot even assess the reasonableness of fees if you can't even find the contracts. So you want to be especially diligent here. Participant education, communications, and training. As we mentioned earlier, 404C, that exemption we were talking about, well, it protects fiduciaries from liability for poor investment decisions made by employees. Therefore, a robust, ongoing participant education program helps employees to make informed decisions and provides valuable tools and resources to help them. Proactively educating participants reduces the risk of poor decisions, supporting your risk management efforts. And of course, retirement committee members are going to want to stay informed of regulatory and legislative changes. The good news is advisors, attorneys, and service providers often provide updates on these matters, so you're not going to have to be chasing these things down. But these matters should be discussed during your regular periodic quarterly meetings or semi-annual meetings to ensure that the plan remains compliant and adapts new regulatory or legislative requirements. So there you have it. Thank you for completing this training on fiduciary responsibilities for retirement committees. By understanding and embracing your role, you are helping to promote the financial well-being for your employees. Your decisions have a direct impact on their retirement security, so diligence, prudence, and transparency should guide your every action. Be the champion who prioritizes the values-driven principles of stewardship, building and protecting the trust of employees have placed in you and in the committee. Together, we can ensure a brighter future for all plan members. If you have any questions or would like to learn more, please reach out to us by using the QR code or by clicking the link in the gray section beneath this video on the YouTube channel. Thank you again for your commitment and your service to others.